What's up, team? Dustin Jones here. Welcome to the PT on Ice Daily Show. I am one of the faculty members within the older adult division. And today we are going to talk about unilateral training that can get contralateral results. What I hope to cover with you all is some key takeaways from a recent publication that trained one side and saw an impact in some different variables on the other. And I'm thinking about the clinicians that are working with folks that may have an immobilized limb, right? Lower extremity, upper extremity, right? Where we want to minimize the deconditioning, the atrophy that can occur. How can we keep these people as fit and healthy as possible or improve upon that while they are having to rest a certain limb? So, what this study did is they took relatively healthy individuals that were older adults, but all of these folks were healthy. I think it's a key thing to understand right out the gate, around an SPPB of 12. And if you've ran the short physical performance battery test, think independent, community dwelling, older adult. And over the course of 12 weeks, they had these individuals in one of two groups. One group, they did a leg press exercise twice a week where they did 6 sets of 12 reps at 40% of their 1 RM. All right. So 6 sets, 12 reps, 40% of their 1 RM, about 72 reps per session. The other group, they did 80% of their 1 RM, so significantly heavier, and then 6 sets of 6 reps. All right. So a total of 36 reps per session. They did twice a week as well. Leg press. All right. That leg press was done on one side. And the instructions for both groups was, hey, I want y'all to do every rep, do it as fast as you can on that concentric part. So it was about how do we get more speed and more of that power input or power stimulus. How does that influence the other limb when we're using lighter loads like 40% of their 1 rep max, or heavier loads like 80% of their 1 rep max? All right. So that was what the study did in terms of the interventions. What they were looking at were four main things. One, they looked at their leg press 1 rep max, right? And keep in mind, they're measuring this on the other side, the side that did not receive the intervention. All right. So leg press, they looked at their maximum unloaded velocity on how quickly they could move. They also looked at their cross-sectional area through ultrasound, so looking at their muscle size and hypertrophy. And they had a timed up and go, gait speed, and then a sit to stand power test. Those were kind of functional capacity measures. They looked at their overall strength, their ability to create force quickly, their velocity, also their hypertrophy, their cross-sectional area, and then also their function is what they looked at baseline, 8 weeks, and then 12 weeks, so a period after their intervention. So what they found, all right, and this is, I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit here, but I think this is really important for a lot of us to understand that are working with folks in this situation, is that when you train one side, there's going to be what we would call a cross education effect to the other side. That you can train and give the stimulus to one side, and the other side is going to get some benefit. That has been proven in several studies before. But what this study found some more interesting or nuanced results of like some of the changes that we can see. All right. So the first thing is that both groups, so the 40% and the 80% of the 1 rep max, the light and the heavy load, both of them improved their 1 rep max strength in the leg press on the other side, the untrained side. It was not very, it wasn't statistically different. They both saw significant improvements. That's really good to know, right? So, first thing out the bat is if we get one limb moving, there's a good odd that we're going to impact the contralateral side from the strength side, right? What they also found is that the heavier loads actually improved their velocity output, so that velocity measure compared to the lighter load, which is somewhat interesting. I would assume that the lighter load was moving quicker. They trained that at a higher speed more regularly, but the heavier load saw the increase in that velocity production. The third finding is that the lighter load, the 40%, of the 1RM that did 6 sets of 12 reps, they were the ones to see a significant increase in their cross-sectional area on that untrained side. So the untrained side saw hypertrophy over that period of time. The heavy load did as well to some extent, but the lighter load, the 40% was more significant, around 3% improvement in their cross-sectional area. That's awesome. I mean, I think about so many folks I've worked with that were basically immobilized on one side, and the atrophy that happens so quickly, right? And to know, man, even if we hit it on this other side, there's going to be an impact, right? Whether we see hypertrophy or whether we just slow down atrophy, right? I think it is time well spent. And then the fourth finding was from the outcome measures is that they didn't see a significant change in a lot of their outcome measures except for the timed up and go performance. The high velocity, lower load movements or the lower load intervention improve the timed up and go a little more, which makes sense, right? When we talk about before that the higher load individuals saw an improvement in their velocity, their movement speed in that measure, that carried over to function with their timed up and go scores. So this is I'll share a slide deck and I'll share the paper as well in the comments. So I'm just going to kind of run through these measures and compare and contrast. So when we look at loading one side and the impact on the other side, we're talking 1 rep max strength on the other side, the untrained side. Both groups improved, right? If we're looking at max power, both groups improved. When we're looking at their ability to produce force quickly and from their max velocity measurement, the heavier load improved. We're looking at hypertrophy, the lighter load improved more. And then when we're looking at function in terms of the timed up and go, the heavier group improved a little bit more. By and large, the differences, when I say more, are very subtle. The big thing, I think the big overarching theme with this is that both loads, both dosage showed some improvements in that untrained side. And with kind of these somewhat mixed results, the big takeaway is that the intent is maybe more important than the actual dosage in this situation. The intent by how they perform these activities, right? These were not standard leg presses; they were max velocity, as explosive and quickly as possible from the concentric phase. And so if I'm working with someone that does have a limitation, right? They have some type of injury, some type of issue where we're not able to train one side. I want to load them up, right? 40, 80% of their 1 rep max. But the big thing is I want them to produce force as quickly as possible. So very interesting study. I think something to acknowledge is that these were healthy older adults. They only trained one side, and it wasn't like the other side was immobilized, right? Which I think that's more similar to a lot of situations that we're going to be working with. So keep in mind those results may have been a little bit different, right? If the untrained side was fully immobilized. However, I think these are some very promising results. When I'm working with folks that do have that unilateral limitation, I can't load directly. What I'm thinking about now is let's load that other side. All right. Probably 40, 80% of their 1RM. Both are going to be great, but I'm going to really emphasize the quick concentric phase to ensure that we can get some that power stimulus. And I'm also going to get as much fitness as I can to where I'm not using that side, right? So I think about some of the ergometers that we can use new steps, bikes, maybe a rower, maybe a ski, right? Some of those things where we can still get the heart rate up, get all the benefits from the higher intensity activity that we know are good, that we don't need to let that unilateral limitation to be kind of a hard stop for these individuals. All right, so very interesting study. It's open access, so I'll drop the PDF in there. If y'all have any other thoughts or questions, feel free to drop that. But hopefully next person that you work with that has that limitation on that one limb, upper extremity, lower extremity, that you know that there are a lot of things that you can do to benefit that side, even if you can't directly load it. All right. Appreciate y'all hanging out with me on this lovely Wednesday. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon. See ya.